Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. I'm here with my boys PD and Cal. Say what's up, gents.
Hey, what's happening?
Hey, ready to rock.
Hey, today we're going to be tackling that difficult subject that people have been talking about for quite some time. The story, this deals basically with the essence of what Superman truly is. This is that movie that
That's
some
not,
people look
that's
to.
not what we're doing. We just doing a review. We just tell them
Okay.
we're doing a review. Good
We are
Lord.
doing a review of Superman Returns. You know, there are some people who love it, some people who hate it, and now we're going to find what the truth is. Between why this film was never made into never got a sequel. Whether was it good? Was it garbage? Let's talk about it. Let's hash it out. Let's have this war. It has to happen. Petey, can you give us a little background before we get this thing bad boy started?
I'm passing
Back in 2006,
EPMD. I passed Cal the microphone. There you
we
go.
can't pass Cal the
I'm
microphone because
passing
Cal.
Cal the
Cal,
microphone.
I slide it
I am
back now.
passing Cal the microphone.
Why can't I have the microphone?
I can't hear you, Cal.
Why can't I have the microphone?
You have the microphone. I'll use it.
All right. So now that I've been totally thrown off, can you reiterate the question, please, so I can answer it? Thank you.
Overview of Superman Returns.
Oh, okay. Superman Returns. 1986 is the last of the Christopher Reeve films for Superman. That franchise. So from 1986 to 2006, there is no Superman film. There were three Superman films that they tried to get off the ground in between that time period. They all died in development hell. And then Bryan Singer comes on with a vision where he did not want to get away from the Christopher Reeve films. He wanted to embrace that, but somehow modernize them, and that is all possible. And so we got Superman Returns. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that the budget for Superman Returns included money that was spent on the failed films that never got off the ground. So when you look at the total budget for Superman Returns, that includes like the script writing for Superman Flyby, that whole spiel that Kevin Smith goes about where he wrote this particular story. All of those costs, all of those costs for Superman Flyby, all of those costs for what is this dude's name again? The guy,
Oh, you talking about
the
J.J. Abrams?
no, no, no. J.J. Abrams was on Superman Flyby. I'm trying to remember because Nicolas Cage
Kevin
and
Smith
I can't.
with Superman.
Not Kevin. The director. The
Liz?
director. Same guy who directed
Oh,
Batman. Tim Burton. Tim Burton. Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was one that there was Superman Flyby direct. J.J. Abrams was on that, and then we had Superman Lives, and that was Tim Burton, and he wanted Nicolas Cage on that. Money was spent. Okay, money was spent on those, and all the money that was spent on those got tacked onto the budget for Superman Returns. So when people look at the final numbers, they're like, "Oh, okay, look, this film had to pay for films that didn't do well and never got off the ground." But they cast Bryan Singer makes the film. It was well received by audiences and critics in real time. Okay, of that, I'm 100% certain. I saw the movie myself on four separate occasions, saw it in IMAX twice, so I got to see the audience reaction. I got to read the reviews at that time. Okay, overwhelming. Okay, 80%, over 80%, audience, critic score, everything. People enjoyed the film. Okay, of course, they may have had their criticisms, but people enjoyed the film. It was greenlit for a sequel, which was supposed to be called Superman, the Man of Steel. Bryan Singer started a treatment on the whole thing, and then slowly but surely, it just never happened. Warner Brothers never pursued it. They didn't show any interest. Bryan Singer was the first person to move on. He did Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. I can't remember who the actress was who played Lois Lane. I'm just getting drawn blanks with names, unfortunately, right now.
Kate Bosworth.
Kate Bosworth. She moved on to do other things as well. And the last person I believe was Brandon Routh as Superman. He hung around the longest. The last time they reached out to him was to play Superman for the Justice League Mortal film that they were trying to get off the ground. And he turned them down, saying, "No, I have to move on because I've been in limbo so long waiting for something to happen, and I just don't think it's going to get off the ground." So that's some of the backstory when it comes to Superman Returns, leading up to the film, and why we never got a sequel. Now, the internet thing was like, oh, it never got a sequel because of these things that happened in the film. But and all of this is very well. All this is verifiable. It was greenlit for a sequel, and Warner Brothers just had no interest in pursuing it. Now, part of the reason why they didn't have any interest in pursuing it was Superman was going through a ton of lawsuits in the 90s and in the aughts. Okay, a ton of lawsuits at the point. At one point, Warner Brothers lost Superman as a property. Okay, they didn't own it. They had to go to an. They got him back on appeal. So there was a point in Warner Brothers history, okay, in DC Comics history, where they no longer owned the character. Okay, so it was pretty unsteady for them. They didn't necessarily know what the outcome was going to be. And Superman's little brother, Batman, started to click on all cylinders. So a lot more interest was put into Batman. They weren't looking to do anything with Superman, had abandoned attention on the whole thing. And that gives us in a nutshell the history of Superman Returns.
I thought we were doing a review of the show.
We said overview. It's overview.
You said an overview.
That's asking the question, why are we getting attacked by two people, bro?
That's one person for your review. That's plenty of room. These are just some history, some facts about Superman Returns before we get into the review. You got a problem with that?
I'll only add is that Valkyrie was supposed to be just a movie in between the two big Superman movies. He wanted to do a small movie. Tom Cruise only made the budget just slightly bigger, but he wanted to do Valkyrie and then go back to Superman. He had all plans to do that before it went away. He didn't move it away from that. So I'm just a slight bit just to add in there. But yeah, that's cool. So let's get to it. Mars, do you want to go? Take back the con and.
Since we are not doing a review and we're arguing
we're doing a review.
So can I respond to what he said or not?
Respond to what? It was an overview.
Yeah, respond to what?
Cool, can I just respond?
We're debating. Okay, here we go.
I mean, I'm just saying, if he can spout what he spouts, can I spout what I want to spout?
Okay,
you're responding to the overview. You're responding to the overview. Okay, all right.
I'm responding to the slander about Batman. That's what I'm really responding to.
What slander of Batman was in there?
I didn't slander. Everything I said was historically accurate.
Batman was attacked.
Everything I said.
If you wish to apologize about the Batman part or exempt it from what you said,
apologize about what? Batman got hot.
It's a simple. My little brother.
That's the truth. Batman got hot.
Okay, so we know Batman. Okay.
See, I knew you weren't going to do it. I knew you couldn't do it.
Here's where I'm going to break it down. Whether or not the cost was included or not, that's still the cost of what the overall cost is. We know for a fact that Batman, which is at a lower budget at 150 million, Batman Begins, the Nolans has helped to start the whole avalanche, that roller coaster of the Batman. $150 million, the first movie, and brought in 356 million worldwide. These are numbers that you can check anywhere. But because of the success of this, the second movie brought in almost over $500 million.
All right. I gotta stop you. Yeah,
stop it, man.
I gotta stop you. He already. No, sorry. I gotta stop. No, I gotta stop you. He substantiated the numbers of why the cost of Superman.
It's still the cost. Whether it's bloated or not, it's still the cost.
We all know. Everybody looked at the big budget of Mojo. We saw the cost. He explained why the cost was so much, and there are big names involved in those movies.
But does it matter? It's still the cost.
Listen to me. Kevin Smith. You got Tim Burton. You have Nicolas Cage, and you have J.J. Abrams. All that is a lot of money. So even if you look at the numbers and say, oh, this is 2 whatever, and it made almost 400, you say, oh, that isn't going above. He substantiated everything that he said. So everything is there. We can move on from this. No more debating. He added in Batman got hot. It's not a big deal, please. He didn't insult Batman. Batman did get hot.
As long as he apologized, I'm good. That's all he has to do.
See, I was hoping you weren't going to go this route because Batman and Superman Returns are pretty much comparable. They're comparable in terms of the amount of money that they made even though Superman did was paying for other films that never came out. If you want to make, okay, if you want to make a comparison,
He's
then you
still
would
going on.
want
I
to,
don't hear you stopping him. He's still going on.
because he started it. If you want to
All right, all right,
make
all
a
right.
comparison between Batman Begins and Spider-Man. Spider-Man had a comparable budget and made over $800 million. Okay, where Batman Begins was the restart of a franchise. It did, it made back its money. It was a solid film, and they were able to build on it. I gave a number of reasons as to why Superman Returns had the budget it did and why no sequel ever happened. There was no lawsuits for Batman. DC, Warner's, they have owned Batman outright since 1939. There is no issue when it comes to that character. Superman is not the same character. Okay, that's the whole thing. I didn't want to get into this whole internet misinformation of why the film didn't get a sequel. And so I presented all of the facts so nobody could start running it off. And by nobody, I mean you, Mars, could not start running off as to this, that, and the other. We got all of the facts. Now let's do the review.
So again, I
Will
have
you
to
stop
reiterate.
saying that? We can't move forward.
I can't. Well,
Right.
he can't. He hasn't apologized yet.
He didn't insult Batman.
There's nothing to I said he got hot. That's an apology? I got to apologize for that?
I'll take it as an apology then. All right, since just to move it forward. But I just want to
Thank
say,
you.
don't you ever.
Just, do you have something to say about this?
Got nothing to say.
I got a lot to say. I say, look, Rotten Tomato scores from Batman Begins were way higher.
No,
than
Superman. Superman.
You can't talk about Rotten Tomatoes for 2006. When did Rotten Tomatoes come into being?
You were saying the popular. So how do you track the popular opinion? So we can say the same thing too. He keeps continuing. I can stop. I can stop. But he keeps continuing.
No, because you keep spouting misinformation, and people are going to leave here thinking there was Rotten Tomatoes in 2006. Okay?
There were
All you have to do.
critics votes. You can say were there. Okay, because they
You
have
still had-
Rotten.
no,
They literally
you
have
still
Rotten
had-
Tomatoes for.
You still had
74%.
places like IMBD. Okay, you had Cinema Score, and what you would have just done was get an aggregate of the. You would have just gotten an aggregate of the reviews from any of the popular sites at that time. But you can't use Rotten Tomatoes.
They have scores, so we can look at it now.
No, I'm talking real time, not
Can
10
we
years
do-
later
Can
when
we
people's
do?
opinions.
Can we do the review? And then if you want to go back to your score,
I'm ready to do this.
I'm ready to do the review. I'm down, bro. So again, I'll pass the ball back to you, Petey, to give a breakdown of the movie, and we can get into this review.
I'm not.
Go for it.
The breakdown of the movie is that Superman says Superman returns. It's obviously double meaning of that Superman in the movie is returning, and then at the same time and returning.
From where?
Well, can you let me talk then? You asked me to do this, and then now you're already saying from where. You keep what? What part of this? Like who, what, where, and why while I do this?
I asked one question. It was one question.
No, I was getting it's a double meaning, of course, and at the same time, with Superman, I can't stand you. You just broke my whole concentration, right? So there's a double meaning. What?
You have him give it back up. You pass it to Cal.
No, I'm saying that it's Superman returning, and at the same time, there's a mystery initially on that. We're not going back. It's not starting from Superman 4 because there's bits that are still going on there. We see in Superman 4, Superman's mom has passed, and he's I think he's I don't remember if he's closing up the farm or not, but he's at the farm in the beginning. So in this movie, she's alive, and we don't know where she's at this period. But obviously it feels like another rocket comes down, and it's similar to the rocket that Superman initially, as a baby, came in. So we're like, what's going on here? Is this a new telling of it? And it's like, no, he was on a space adventure. So Superman actually returning in this movie from space. He goes visit Krypton and to see if anything is there. And then next thing you know, he goes back to his life as Clark Kent. He goes back to the Daily Planet. He gets his job back, and at the same time, Luthor has plans. He's stealing money from Noel Neal, who's playing a part in here in the old folks' home. And ultimately, his new machinations is to get back to the Fortress of Solitude, where Superman should be, instead of going out to Krypton. And then next thing you know, he's got the crystals. Instead of what he originally planned to do, he gets the crystals. He's going to use these crystals in very devious ways. So Superman's getting acclimated, or Clark Kent's getting acclimated to what's going on, and Lois is not there. She's actually on a plane on this fancy shuttle on a plane. At the same time, she's doing this story. Clark Kent is getting connected to everybody, and of course, something happens leading to the big opening Superman scene. Now, the first scene with the rocket was pretty big. This is even bigger with the space shuttle on top of a plane and things going awry because of what who was it? What who's it? Lex Luthor does with the crystal, and this leads to your big scene: Superman saving his plane and saving Lois in their first meeting in this 5-year gap where Clark Kent and Superman haven't been around. So ultimately, as this movie goes along, obviously there we see Lois, who has a kid now, and we're like, whoa, what's going on here? But at the same time, she's like not saying that this is Superman's kid, and she's with the man right now. So she has a beau, she has a boy that's what she calls a munchkin. Is he's, I guess he's like 5 or so or something like that. But then as they go along, he's getting acclimated. Superman's being connected back with the people, but Luthor comes in and is using these bits of crystals and making these big, huge waves in Metropolis, and his plan to make almost Kryptonite Island to destroy Superman. So, and luck have it, Lois is going on, investigating the story, takes her son with her, and she gets captured. It's almost a dual story because Lois has a lot of stuff in this movie, and this leads Superman, of course, to come to save them, but at the same time saving them, he's going to a Kryptonite Island, so it's kind of, they deal a lot with Superman's mortality and the feeling of the people in Metropolis of Superman leaving, Superman going through this, and ultimately Superman having to get rid of this Kryptonite Island, even though this is his biggest weakness, and this is the biggest scene in here, and ultimately leads to, Superman, we don't know, just to do the review part, not say, give you the ending, but can Superman survive this? He does have some help from Lois, her boyfriend, and a little help from their, from their son. So a lot of things happen here. Superman is worse for wear, and we don't know if Superman makes it out of it. He does make it to the hospital, and ultimately he hears something, and we find out about who the kid is to him, and this gives him, even though he heals, he gives him a new focus, and he gets to interact with Lois again, and he interacts with the kid slightly, but we know for the next one this is going to be a big part of the story. So that's basically the story, unless Cal, any other bits that I missed you want to chime in about.
The only thing I'd add is that Superman Returns is supposed to take place directly after Superman 2.
Yeah.
So in Superman 3, Superman 4, certain things happen. We realize that Clark's mother, his earthly mother's passed away, but here she's going to be alive because straight after Superman 2. And
I said that. I did say that.
And any of the portrayals of, say, like Lex Luthor, are going to be in line with what happened with Superman 2, Superman 1, Superman 2.
So Mars, do you want to go in with your review?
I'd like to hear Cal's review of the show.
Okay.
No, I get last licks. I get last licks on this. You can go right ahead.
I'll get last place. That's what I said.
You're gonna have a whole bunch of dead air because I'm not going. You can go right ahead.
I'm not going either.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
All right. Ian. This is what you did to the show.
Who? Me? You're blaming me?
I said Ian. If he's watching this and he gets to this far into the show, this is what you asked for.
Superman.
You asked for this.
Superman expert.
I'll be the bigger man. Clearly, the adult in the situation, and not have.
Thank you. It's appreciated. Yeah. Go ahead. Be the bigger man.
All right. So, review of the show. Back when it first came out, there was a huge excitement because Superman had finally come out after quite some time, and the thought was
20 years. 20 years.
Quite some time. If you're going to talk, I'll let you talk. And I said quite some time, and a lot of people were happy to get it back. This also reminded me of the same type of feeling people had when the sequel films came out for Star Wars. Like, yeah, we're back, good and stuff. And I think the initial feeling was that hey, this was a good thing. But I think that as time went on, one of the things that we started to notice is that some of this stuff just didn't hold up as well as it possibly could. Right? One of the things, the premise behind this whole thing, the whole new real estate grab that we have with our man Lex Luthor, who is probably one of the weakest characters in the show compared to what was going on with Lex Luthor in the comics. Now, if you, and I think this is probably one of the biggest divergence between Batman and Superman, in that in Batman you had the Dark Knight came out what in 1987, 86 with
Yeah,
Frank Miller, and so there was an evolution of the character. Yes, it got darker and gritty, but there was an evolution of a new character. But we're gonna we'll keep the schoolboy Superman. I'm not knocking Brandon Routh. I actually like Brandon Routh. Some people said he was irreverent. He didn't have any charisma, but I think he played it as well as Singer wanted him to play it. Right, and it was basically a copy paste on who wanted to be a Christopher Reeves. And again, I was a good thing is following what happened with the whole Star Wars sequels, where they want to just basically play note for note what was happening before to get the people back in the audience. So that's my take on that. But Brandon Roth, I mean, I think he did a decent job. I don't think he did a bad job at all. Um, I think the same thing goes with Henry Cavill when he was a interesting character. He was someone who took on the Superman role. But did he ever really play the Superman role? He didn't get a chance. And I think these two actors, unfortunately, and it's tragic actually because they were both given work by two directors, Singer for Routh, and we can't say the other guy's name because we still like him too. That
why can't you
they
say his
put him in a
name?
direction. We're not going to say the name. We're going to
Why
put
not?
because when you say his name, people go all crazy about things. We're not going to say his name. So we,
What's his name?
I'm not going to tell you his name. So we are going to say that there was some way.
We can, oh, you can't do that, man. The people, we're doing this for the people. You can't bring this out and then withhold it from the people. They tune in for a show. You got to tell them the name.
So, like I was said, um, he, we had there was a particular reaction to the way Superman was treated in the verse that people had problems with, right? So, but was
You
Henry
said
Cavill?
the what? I'm sorry. The what verse? The what verse?
He sounds
But
like he did said a curse word that he shouldn't be saying.
I'm not saying the name.
The
So
snit verse?
I
What?
didn't
What?
say snit. I didn't say snit. I didn't
The
say snit.
he did the Wu Tang sword.
Sounds like
Okay.
some.
All right.
It
All right.
sounds
All
like
right. All right. The
something.
Snyderverse. All right.
Sounds like some.
The
Thank you. I was about
Snyderverse.
to
All right.
say.
Are
It
you
sounds like something
happy?
German.
The
Un
Snyderverse.
Schneiderverse.
Okay. So the Snyderverse. And so therefore, people still like Henry Cavill and wanted to come back. He wanted to come back to the role. And Brandon Routh, this guy unfortunately was stuck around the longest. And Cal pointed out that many people left the project, but this poor guy stuck around for a long time trying to, be the Superman. And unfortunately, he never got that opportunity until the crossover of the Arrowverse, where he played um, a Superman role, and he did a great job. He had matured. He'd become what people would have wanted him to be before. But digress. In terms of the show, going back to the movie, I think the weakness really was in the script, right, in the direction, and that the fact of the matter is that you have a movie that you're trying to get people to come in to because you're saying, hey, we're going to do everything for Christopher Reeves, but it's not, right? Was it an okay movie? It was an okay movie. I wouldn't say it wasn't, but in light of all the stuff that was happening, Lex Luthor coming up with a plan that he came up with before, similar to it, right? Another real estate scam. Lex Luthor not even growing as a character, being the exact same funny, off the wall, Gene Hackman like character. And we know Kevin Spacey has the talent to do a lot more. It was kind of wasted. I mean, we've seen him in other shows and what he can do. Um, I thought that was really a weakness in the whole situation. And when you go back and then at that same time, what was happening? We had Lex Luthor as president. In fact, Lex Luthor as president, and I suggest anybody who has an opportunity to go back and read those stories. Um, some people think it actually is a prophetic story because it basically mirrors the current president that we had now, to some degree. It's just amazing how they got that. This is a Jeff Loeb story. So if you like Jeff Loeb, I think you can go back and look into this yourself. So to me, overall, I think it was an okay movie. but it lost. There was so much more that prevented it from being a blockbuster off the top, the same way that Nolan's Batman Begins started off and just killed it with the critics, killed it with the money, killed it with the awards, and killed it with the fandom. We just didn't have that here. But it wasn't because Brandon Routh was bad. Brandon Routh was a decent guy. Kate Bosworth, they never gave her enough material. I don't know if she would have been a better Lois if she would have had much more, a much more, I wouldn't say snappier, more repertoire with the type of repertoire that you had between like Terry Hatcher and the Superman of her time. I didn't get that feeling. It didn't feel that way. And then of course the added element of the child, I think was not used as well as it possibly could be. So those are my elements. Okay. Again, I go back to say I'd give it like a C. It wasn't bad. At the time I liked it, but in going back and watching it again, it really doesn't hold as well as I would hope. But I don't blame the characters. I blame once again the director and the script in doing this. I
Okay.
pass it on to Cal.
He wants to go last, so I'll go.
Oh,
So I'll
so
go.
did I behave myself? Did I give some good reasons?
Close, but at the end you kind of went into the other stuff. But what can we do?
Oh my gosh!
You couldn't help
It's
it.
like
You couldn't help
you
yourself.
give an inch, take a mile. You take an
Well,
inch, you take a mile.
ultimately, the only I said that because you asked, but ultimately for me, because I think when I saw this in the theater, especially the opening scene with the mother, and it kind of sets you where she was, where the thing is at, but then at the same time they kind of draw back to the first, they have the symbolism of baby Clark landing, and it's Superman traveling in a starship or a star drive similar to what he had and when he was a baby. So it was kind of like, okay, they're trying to do this. That's kind of just for shock value. I was like, all right, let's, I can move past that. And then they were trying to show you how, what's the name, Lex Luthor got his money with the old folks home and with Parker Posey in there. And but at the same time, it really was tough because it really felt like not a sequel to Superman 2. It just felt like a retread. So it was kind of like, as Mars was saying, the real estate thing. And it didn't feel like anything was coming from Luthor. Luthor got, was going back to the crystals and now was taking it with him. And then, his idea of taking a bit of the crystals. And then the same way, the Fortress of Solitude was made, every time he breaks a piece off it, it makes kind of a, this sort of this reverberation through a large area. So it was like another bit that he was just kind of, like he's more like the mad thinker. Like the mad thinker is someone who can't really come up with ideas. He can use other people's ideas. And I think when you had the Gene Hackman in the first Superman movie, one of the best bits is Lex Luthor looks at Superman and uses his fists first, but when he talks about the stuff he's planning, Superman, like Lex Luthor hadn't had with his crew, hasn't had anyone to understand what he's talking about. When Superman gets there, he understands everything he's talking about. The only thing is that Superman doesn't know that what's the name is hiding a card under the table, which is the kryptonite. There's no way he can know that. And the fact it's in lead, it kind of points out that, oh, okay, you're trying to do this, but it was a trick because he's going to cheat and kind of play to that. So it was like, but as far as wits, he knew everything that was going on here. This one, it felt like he was just someone that was kind of using other people's stuff. And I don't know that Kevin Spacey brought anything more into it besides trying to go more humorous, but I don't think any of the jokes kind of landed for me at all. Regretfully, nothing happened with Parker Posey, and I felt like Otis stuff worked. Miss Tess Parker, of course, I think I fell in love with Miss Tess Parker when I met her, and I'm a big fan of Parker Posey, but it was kind of like her stuff outside of, weren't there two dogs? That was about the only bit that I was kind of said, okay, that one kind of made me chuckle. And then as far as the tough part was when Clark Kent comes back, he's outside of Jimmy, he's kind of forgotten and kind of a cipher. Like Lois He didn't even talk to. He talked to his son about stuff. Didn't talk to her son about Clark Kent at all. So it's like she, as far as Clark Kent, is nowhere in her view at all. And at least in Superman 3, they had a moment where Lois was trying to ask Clark to go to dinner or lunch or something like that, and then we had Lana kind of state a claim, and you see a look in Margot Kidder's face of feeling kind of sad that she hadn't kind of saw someone else is seeing Clark before her, so that kind of thing. So that I think is important. That's what I think Terry Hatcher kind of brought to the role of even though they're rivals, sort of having some sort of interest in Clark too, just minor, not as much as Superman, but some interest in saying, hey, there is something attractive about him. So that was kind of tough that Clark Kent was kind of just a cipher here. They try to pull out some comedy, which I don't think worked too well. It was just not big comedy, but just slight moments, him breaking the picture, having that sort of thing. So when in the struggle of this and seeing that there's a lot of retread here, going back to stuff, as a viewer, I kind of picked the stuff I could watch. Like the same thing I did when I was watching, I guess, Superman 3 and Superman 4. There would be moments that I could just watch to be like, okay, this is a scene I like. Now, I think like the plane scene, it was similar to, I think, Adventures of Superman, but that by Marv Wolfman. Now, Marv Wolfman had him kind of struggling with the plane. Byrne had a different thing. Towards the end of it, it was kind of a mix of both, because Superman is doing something that, like being able to hold it up and the rest of the plane doesn't fall apart. That was kind of pieces of both, like where he struggles with the plane, but the plane doesn't fall apart. That's kind of Byrne lean. So when he's flying, the plane won't, the logic of it, him holding it up and the physics of the plane just falling all apart on its own weight doesn't happen because it's Superman, right? So that was a bit that kind of Byrne played with, whereas he could still do the stuff he did in the past where, he lifts up a boat and the boat doesn't fall apart on its own weight, that sort of thing. So it's like, okay, this is cool. They have a bit like that. They, of course, for effect when he's lifting the kryptonite out. Now, that was something I think before I think something I was thinking story-wise, when Superman lifts the kryptonite thing, even though I wouldn't, I don't want him to kind of be able to push against kryptonite, it was just a cool visual to have him, get his powers back. Because usually it's instantaneous that kryptonite takes out his powers. And this one, he was pushing against it. So it was like more for effect. And then he goes to the hospital. He has a dramatic fall to the ground and he goes to the hospital, that sort of thing. But for effect, it was a cool effect. They did try to play up the mortality a lot when he first gets beat up. And if he has some strength, him not knowing that, not feeling any weakness, where Luthor just kind of pushes him and then he just falls apart after that, was kind of rushed. But they were really seemingly playing up the mortality. They also did the same thing when Superman picks back the other half of the boat, where his powers when he's flying, well, in the comic when he's flying, but in this, it still doesn't fall apart on its weight when he pulls it back up to save them. So it was cool seeing that kind of effect in Superman, like when you see Superman pick up the edge of a building and it doesn't fall off, against its own weight. So there's some bits that I liked. I really struggled because they try to throw you off with the kid, say that this isn't his kid, and then they have a moment where it is his kid. So I was just like, okay, this is a mystery that you didn't really need to try to have, You try to say, yeah, Superman 2, they had their moment. I'm saying Superman to me is, Americana, old school Americana. He knows if he had, sex with someone, he knows that whether he had a kid or not. Like that's the best, easy way I can say it. He's not like a person in the army that like goes off and then he leaves Italy and then comes back and says, hey, 5 years later, hey, you got a kid, what's going on? And not ask the question, hey, like Cam and Mace, hey, Mace, this woman out in such and such, she named her kid Mason. It's like, no, I wasn't there around that time, that sort of thing. So I think Superman is kind of the old school type of person. And that's not the Boy Scout thing. I think that, he would have the kid within wedlock, or if he knocks him up, he gets him married right away, the American way. So that was the kind of thing I was iffy on, and then how this plays out. But the biggest thing is that
Great.
huh? I think the biggest thing.
Dude, what's he put? He's supposed to what? Hit her with the X-ray vision before he leaves the planet. Make certain she's not pregnant.
You know,
No,
what
no.
you're doing. If you're
Yeah, I'm trying.
if you're shooting up the club, then you're shooting up the club. You know
You
whether
come
you
back
shoot up the
five
club
years
or not.
later and there's somebody there, and
You
you're like,
you
wait a
saying
second,
I need a
this was here
test. As
before.
Superman, I need a test.
He needs to
I
do.
need
He
to
needs to
find
know how to
out.
do math. That's what
I
he needs to
need to
know how
go
to
into.
do.
I'm gonna
That's the
leave the Earth.
superpower he
I'm gonna
lacks.
be gone. But before I'm gonna be gone, I need to give this chick a blood test.
No, I'm just
No,
saying you go
no.
back 5 years and you do a mathematical test, something that he should have been able to do. 5 years, and this kid
You
is what, almost
making me
five?
say Superman's pull-out game is weak? You want me to say that? That he shot up the
Hey,
club and he didn't know what was going on?
No, what we're saying is
to
that
the
he
best of
can't
my
count.
knowledge, Superman doesn't pull out.
All we're saying is that Superman can't count the months. That's the problem. That's all we're saying.
You
You know,
shoot at the
and
club,
that's a
you
big.
know what it is. You know what's going on. I think he's old school. I think he's smarter than that. If he's
I
having
come
sex,
back,
he's what's the
chick
name?
fucking kid. I ask her. She's over here talking about this dude. She's over here talking about this dude over here. Okay, I'm gonna take her at a word. Kid acts sickly half the bloody time. Okay,
I'm saying he
nah,
shot at the
Superman.
club. I'm saying he knows he shot at the club. He didn't fall asleep afterwards and say, "Oh, I didn't
The
know."
kid civil rights and gave him a DNA test without it.
No, I'm
Make sure
saying
this kid is fine.
he knew he shot at the club. If you know you shot at the club,
Okay, we got the shop the club reference. Okay, we don't need
Okay,
to keep.
you want the answer. You're going to the
Now,
asking later. Talking about asking. I'm talking about the day of, saying, "Hey, the
club doesn't mean
scare." The scare is
shut
like,
up. The club doesn't mean I hit somebody.
yes, it does. If you do it, you said the person turns to you and say, "Hey, it's happened," and they're like, "Yo." You don't say, "Oh, yo, she ain't call me." Superman's like, "Yo, she ain't call me. I'm
it's been
cool.
5 years.
5 years, I'm out. She ain't. Yo, it's on her. Like play."
Look,
He's like,
Jews go away to
"Yo."
jail. Jews go away to the military, and they come back and see some kid hanging out 5 years later. They're like, huh?
They go
What's
the
up?
other
That's
way. They turn the
you
other
know.
way, turn around the corner. But ultimately, there's things, since it was a lot of retreads. There was things I could pick out to like, but ultimately it wasn't working for me. So that's why I had to do what I do when there's a movie isn't hitting. So it's sad to say there was some bits in there that I liked. There were some bits that I didn't like. I'm not going to necessarily give it a grade. I wanted to see what they were going to do with the kid and how they were going to play this out. I had a lot of reservations, but ultimately, you know, I was if we weren't going to get that, I didn't want it to wait again for seeing what was happening. It was just like you did all this, you had the kid, and then yeah, the comic books kind of play up that type, not an actual kid, but someone else who has powers. So they kind of gave you another story similar to that to see how that played out. But it was just kind of like, oh, now it's like the Marvel, what's those things? The the end scenes now they're like all of them are non-existent because they're just going their own way. So there's a whole bunch of setup that's been there that's gone. So it's like, but of course it's a movie. They can't necessarily always have to follow through. But it's like you have all this build up, you agree to it, and then you're like, oh, we're backing out. We're throwing this all together instead of saying, well, no, I think the what's the name, Star Trek, the motion picture, did make a considerable amount of money. So they were, planned to do a part two, but the thing was that they, took it away from Gene Roddenberry and then they gave it to Harve Burnett, who, ultimately stayed a producer on it after the fact. I think came back for directing in episode 6. But yeah, ultimately there was some weaknesses in this one. And I think it wasn't different. It needed to be a little more different than the than Superman 2 and or Superman 1. and I didn't really have the when Kevin Smith was talking about there was no punches, I was like, did you see the plane scene? It's like that's decent enough action, and him picking up the planet. That's enough action for your movie because there are not other people that he can fight. There's not a
The
lot.
bullet off the eye.
The Bill Eye is another thing too. That's another cool thing too. So it's like you had these moments. You don't need,
That went right there.
but you don't need to have a big punch in the punch out when you have people that aren't. He can't punch them out because they're human. And he's not going to. He can like cart them off to jail in 2 seconds if necessary. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. I mean, well, thank you.
Pascal.
I think that that's the Cal. One point I wanted to make though before you pass it on to Cal is that 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
you had Bryan Singer did spend $10 million on doing what he was to document what he was doing in Krypton, and they decided to axe that from the movie. Because that was one of the biggest mysteries. Like, where were you? I mean, why were you gone so long? What were you doing? And I'll pass it on to
You're talking about the cuts. You're talking about that cut scene where you see him in the ship and he's got the suit on and he's maneuvering around Krypton. That scene?
They said it was $10 million. That's $10 million. That's nuts. That was the scene. I thought there was something more than that.
No, it's on YouTube. It's like about it's what anywhere between maybe like 2.5. I would say 5 minutes tops, maybe. But I think it peters out about four.
Wow, $10 million on that. All
Well,
right, go on, Cal. Tell
I
us what's
don't
up.
know. See, that's the thing. I don't know because any place where you have any documented stuff doesn't give a dollar cost for it. And then are you saying Bryan Singer said he spent 10 million on that scene?
That's what someone said. Bryan Singer said.
Well,
What's he
I
supposed to
can't get.
spend on that though? It's a
I
scene
can't.
in space.
I can't do the here. I can't do the hearsay. I can't do the hearsay at this point because you, a guy could say 10 million. Somebody else could say five. Somebody else could say one. Somebody else could say. Somebody else could say 25, 50 at the end of the day. There's nothing documented about that, and then the scenes cut. Scenes get cut all the time, regardless of the amount of money spent on them. A scene gets cut. So you have what is it? You had when Singer did Excellent Days of Future Past, and he had the scene with Anna Paquin in it. She got paid. Okay, she got paid, so you had to pay her salary, pay everybody's, and the scene that she was in got cut. So it happens. Regardless of the dollar amount, the scene's going to get cut. The scene's going to get cut.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised, man. You guys really went in on this. I was like, the criticism was a lot heavy. I thought mine would be the heaviest criticism at the end of the day. But there was like a line by line, criticism of this particular film. I was not as critical. After 20 years, I was happy to see Superman back in the theater. And my main thing was to see if they would get Superman right, because I had been seeing a whole bunch of stuff in comics, a whole bunch of, the only thing on TV was Superman, the New Adventures of Lois and Clark, and then good grief, the Superman animated series. So for me, it was just like, all right, nice to see him again, live action. And my basis is, do you get Superman correct? They had spent such a long amount. I was surprised that Clark Kent didn't get more light in the film, because since '86 they had literally been pushing this whole thing of Clark Kent being the face. But then I thought what they did was reasonable, because we're following Superman 2. Superman 2, Clark Kent doesn't have a lot of strong connections with anybody in Metropolis. For the most part, he's like a coat hanger. So he comes back after 5 years. The only person who seems happy to see him is Jimmy, which is pretty much in line with what we had with the film. So you can want more, but if I'm playing along with that, I can't disagree with them for that particular continuation. You could still develop some more relationships, and they had some cutscenes. I think there was there was at least one cutscene with Clark Kent and Jimmy hanging out that didn't make it to the theater. I don't know how much money they spent on that one, but again, that one got cut. But the idea was that this was supposed to be picking up, continuing from Superman 2. So that was that's your foundation, that's your barometer. I was like, okay, so there are things I may not have agreed with it, but if it tacks back to that, then hey, that's what you were trying to do in the first place. The Superman stuff, overwhelmingly, I got with. And again, I had saw it 4 times in the theaters, so it was very clear to see the stuff that the audience resonated with. 4 times, same jokes always landed, same scenes always got applause. round of applause at the end of each viewing that I went to. So, I was like, okay, so audiences pretty much are okay with it, but this is a general audience, not necessarily guys who read comics or guys like me who are really heavily into Superman. The I don't disagree with too much of the criticisms I heard from either one of you guys, but the one thing I thought that they made, I'll call it an error, was that they separated Superman and Lois Lane, which they should not have done, especially with giving her a kid, and then they gave her, they gave her a significant other, and he wasn't a jerk or somebody of that nature. He actually was like, this is a nice guy. This is a cool guy at the end of the day, almost like a Superman type guy himself, and that really puts it at odds because Lois Lane, Superman, Clark Kent, that they're supposed to be together, and then you got to X out this dude over here, but there's no reason to have any enmity towards him because he's a solid guy. So I didn't think that was a smart move. You want the two of them to be together, and it shouldn't be any situation where Superman's eavesdropping, or they're about to kiss and it's like, oh no, we can't, because I'm married, that type of nonsense. That was just a poor move. I heard criticisms about him having a kid, but I can't take any of those things to weight because when he gave him a kid in the comics, everybody cheered it. So, it was bad in the movie, great in the comic. That's, just typical fandom at the end of the day. We don't like it unless we like it. What I did really enjoy about the film was, well, these were some of the better. Superman Returns has the best Superman action scene, bar none, up until the Superman and Lois on the WB. That plane rescue was just top. That was a top-notch action sequence, and somebody who really thought about doing something with Superman. Because again, he's not going to get into some martial arts throwdown because he's stronger, more powerful than everybody. And I thought they played it correctly because he's going in for the rescue, no problem with the space shuttle. But it's been 5 years since he's had to do this. And, people are like, well, hey, you should be able to do it. It's like, no, it's been 5 years. You guys want him not to be perfect. You want him to be fallible. But then when he does, if he does something of that nature, then it becomes, oh, look, see, so on and so forth. Dude can't catch a break. But the whole thing I thought was executed flawlessly right up to the point where he lands the plane, sticks the landing, if you will, gets a standing ovation and cheer. Superman returns, and there's none of this. Well, today it would be different. Everybody would be like, oh, forget. Oh, now you're back. Oh, where have you been for the last 5 years? You owe us. But at that point, he's just received with open arms that he's back. Everybody loves the fact that he's back. The lifting of that kryptonite continent and everything, good sequence. Especially when you got the scale of how small he was in comparison to the task that he had to do. Really good Superman moments, overall. But I think the biggest thing that it suffered from was that distance that got put between Superman and Lois Lane, that romance aspect of it, which is something that Singer was going for, was totally absent from the films. And then you got a guy in there who's blocking, and if you're going to put him in there, it helps if he's a jerk, somebody that you actually want to see get a comeuppance. But the guy who they had in there just wasn't that. So I'm not too sure how well they thought through it. But overall, this was a re-entry, and it was supposed to be the first film, and we're supposed to build from it, which is not how people take films today. You need to be hot out the gate, hit the ground running, $1 billion, or we don't see you again for another 10 years. This was, a different time period where you could make a film and come out and make 300, 400 million, very much like the Marvel movies did, and be considered successful enough to continue and build on it. This didn't happen with this particular franchise, but I didn't feel that there were no detrimental acts taken throughout the film. Things I didn't necessarily agree with, things that I really enjoyed, but nothing to kill a franchise at the end of the day, except for the reasons that I stated earlier.
I would only chime in. I didn't need to see any or a lot of Clark Kent scenes. I just didn't want him to be a total cipher. Now, Superman 2, I'll just chime in since we brought it up. Superman 2 was more playing up the Silver Age kind of Lois, trying to figure out, Superman is, Clark Kent is Superman thing that was going on. and they have the most visual thing in Superman 2 where she jumps out the window and, and Superman runs down to save her, and it's egg on Lois in that scene, and it's pretty funny. But it goes, they have a couple other moments in there where they really play up kind of that Lois thing that was not just in the Lois Lane books, was also in the Superman books. So in this, I think Superman one, what was it? Perry kind of says, not only does it this, that, and the other, he's the fastest typist, meaning he's getting the job done. And then I think in three, Lois has the bit where we don't know he's going home, but he brings back a story, and what's the name? Lois says, "I have competition," in there. So it's like these are, even though Superman 3 kind of plays up with the Lana scenes, kind of play up all the Clark stuff. I just needed a good scene between the two of them. And even in '86, there's not like 3 million, scene. There's more Superman fighting than that in the comic books, but just have a good scene in there where you and you see as we go forward into the next movies, like Clark Kent isn't even in. Clark as a family person to his family is in there, but Clark as a reporter, he's not even a report. He's a reporter at the last minute of Man of Steel, and we don't even know how he got the job in the Batman Superman thing. So I think, and I would take the nod from the guys who was it Whitney Ellsworth and Mort Weisinger, whereas in the '50s they're doing what we would see as the fantastical Superman, but when they're doing TV, they're doing the similar to the Golden Age Superman. So these are the Superman guys, and they're doing TV, but they can't do fantastical action. But they're using the Golden Age Clark Kent, who's reporting a story, and in the end, Superman comes in, the voice of justice, not the big justice stuff of taking out, going after woman beaters and stuff like that, and going after senators, but Superman saving the day at the end. So it's like you had that dynamic in the TV show by these classic editors. So it's a dynamic that can show, you can do a quality Clark Kent. It's just saying you had a Clark Kent, you had Brandon Routh, trying his best, but just give him something besides trying to say, hey, he's kind of steerage. Like they say, somebody died, and that's how Clark got his job back. He's like, you're useless, man. It's really, tough. And that's not mild-mannered. That's kind of, loser. That kind of thing. Well, they went loser. So I just need one scene.
You're supposed to build on that stuff. I think the whole idea is that you're supposed to get a chance to build on all of that stuff. You had a lot of complexity going on with. I could not imagine a relationship where Superman is going to be distant from Lois Lane. Clark Kent is going to somehow be closer. She's married with his kid. It just gets really mucky at the end of the day, which was a very big sticking point. And then for me, it's like, this was supposed to be the first film in a new franchise. So you're supposed to get a chance to actually build on this stuff. If we go by the original Superman franchise, it was 3 films before we really got some Clark Kent moments, that had nothing to do with Superman overall. So these guys never got that shot to do that with this particular franchise.
Just the bit. That's what I'm saying. The bit that, what's the name? The bit that they kind of did in the first one is not even like a subplot. Is like you have Perry saying, this is Clark Kent, and not only XYZ, he's this, and then they also have the visual of him walking through the planet, which is obviously a building in New York City off of 42nd Street. Like that New York kind of thing said, okay, this makes sense. If this guy can be totally, if Metropolis like New York, no one's gonna run into this guy and be like, yeah, there he is, because it's like the way they shot it, they were kind of like that. So it's like, I'm not even asking for a big scene, or having, as you were saying, have Clark and Lois go in the story, but like Lois, like almost as you were saying, that's a bit I didn't get to mention, was that her subplot was almost She was almost like the Kobe Bryant in this movie. She had like a big sort of plot where she kind of, ran around and did stuff without, whereas I think there's bits where Superman and Lois are kind of running things together in the first movie. So there's bits of them, that's all you kind of need. And he was kind of there like, how did I get here? The walls are nice. Oh, baby. Oh, no. And they do the storytelling bit of her getting, they show that Lois is like Lois, where she's the go getter in the first one with bad spelling. Like she's a million times better. So yeah,
Did you care about Lois? Did you care about Lois? And that's one thing that I found in the movie. I didn't really
that's a
feel
that's a
Lois.
that's a big
It
thing.
didn't. It didn't.
I wanted to.
Look.
I
I
wanted
see.
to. I definitely wanted to.
Unfortunately, I
But why
see
are
Terry
you going to care
Hatcher.
about her if she's distant from Superman?
I know, but still, you still want to. You want her. She's Superman. She's Superman's first love
Did you
interest.
care about
Superman
Did you care
love.
about Perry White? Did you care about Perry White in the movie?
I like Superman. I thought Superman just needed more direction. I think
But
But
Superman
did
that
you
was.
care
you
about?
pointed out that I
But
like
did you?
Perry White
But did
in all the movies. The
but did
bits that he had in there
but did you
was so
care?
great. And in the first
Yeah, I
movie,
mean Perry White
Perry
wasn't
White.
bad,
Perry White,
but I'm saying to me in a
You
Superman
didn't care
story,
about
in
Perry
the
White.
Cal, this is just to me. In a Superman story, you gotta like Superman. You gotta like Lois Lane. You gotta think that relationship is a real relationship. And I just didn't feel that heat between them. And lastly, you have to have there's some villain, whether it's Lex Luthor, and especially Lex Luthor, that there has to be some point where you think, wow, Superman can actually be seriously hurt. I don't in no time do I while I was watching that movie that I feel well at least when I rewatch it now that I feel there was ever any time that he was really in danger. He was going to survive everything. He was going to come
When he
back.
got
That's the movie.
stabbed with the kryptonite and they were beating the scat out of him, you didn't feel he
Yeah,
was in
but I mean,
trouble?
it's not like the super powered heroes or somebody like was coming after him. Like
Oh, wait,
again,
wait, hold on, hold
it's
on a
a
second. So
little, yeah.
wait a second, oh, wait a
you
second.
agree, Petey,
They
right?
do,
I
they
don't
do
agree.
every
I don't agree.
Don't
they
agree? Tell me why.
they
Oh,
beat the scat out of him. They literally did the Passion of Superman, stabbed him with
yeah,
kryptonite, left the kryptonite in his body. He had to be rescued.
yeah.
He had to be
There it is.
rescued.
It's all in
Okay,
there.
and then not only that, he has to go back. Okay, and lift the island up again. It's filled with kryptonite and fall back to Earth. That's not enough for you.
That
He
whole
wasn't in
he
enough
should never
mortal
have been able to
jeopardy.
lift the island to begin with. Okay,
And
he
he's going to
never should have
save
been
the
able to lift the
people,
island.
man. Doesn't mean no. See, that's ridiculous because you would accept that from another character. You would accept another character having to strive past their limits in order to save people. You would accept that. With Superman, you are moving the standard and making it
No,
unreachable.
I'm saying the
He's got
standard
to
for
lose a
Superman has
limb or
always
something.
been kryptonite is the thing, the one thing. He's unstoppable everywhere else. But this
Mm-hmm.
is the one thing that holds him back. And then if you
It
start saying,
did.
you know what,
It,
get what?
it did.
He can still
It
have
did
enough
hold him
strength to
back.
do what he has to do to get her over the thing.
Okay, I will say
No,
because there's
you forgot
things.
that scene. You forgot that scene where after he gets hit with the kryptonite, he flies up into the stratosphere to get one good charge of energy, and then he goes back to lift it up. Okay, so they give you the reason why. He's like, okay, he's got a little bit more
Okay, you know
sunlight,
what?
so he can
You're
do
right
that.
about that. You're right about that.
No, I'll say there were different things.
I can do that.
They weren't following everything that happened um in the first two movies because they do have Clark Kent scene. I'm not sure if that was something that was added later in the director's cut where he has glasses and he's hopping around. And when we saw the first movie, Clark Kent doesn't have glasses when he's in Smallville. So it's like they did do different things in this is their interpretation of how kryptonite works. We have to accept it's not the same thing, but that was jarring initially. But they're doing a different take on it, and they substantiate what they were doing with what Cal said, him going up to the sun and then getting power and then coming down and using as much of that power he had to lift it and toss it into space. So
Yeah, I'm listening to you. It's like, man, no, kryptonite is supposed to be the end and all. So Superman should have been dead, and the Earth should have been like tilted off its axis, and then it would be his fault. Like, come on, man, come on. This is a regular hero trophy that the hero gets into some situation, okay, and either outsmarts, okay, finds a way out of it, or has to push himself one last time in order to save other people or to escape. It shouldn't be that big of a deal for you.
All right. So I think we got to them. We gotta go. There's what?
So let's review. Make sure
No.
everybody understands how we feel. PD, you felt like what?
I had a lot. I
No
struggled.
grade for you. No
That's,
grade for you. But what about some of the characters?
when you brought that's the thing. When you brought up Perry, that's the thing. Seeing the first movies and those scenes that Perry had, he wasn't in the movies for that long, but those moments like kind of worked. Even those things were memorable scenes. When he goes to the names, this, that, and the other, and the throwbacks work. Like the callbacks are saying, "Hey, what's he doing?" Then he goes to Lois, and Lois like, "Oh, she has a moment." Like who's he dating? And you have like I think that was the line, and then he has the line where he says, God spoke to Moses and that sort of thing. So it's like you just want to, if you, and, it's what do they say? Like sometimes writing like a Chinese puzzle, especially when you have a lead character, you can't have everyone to have like long scenes, and I'm definitely not expecting that. But just give them a moment, like have everyone have a scene. I think like the hard thing to go, and this is not, it's definitely not an exact comparison, but if you look at Infinity War, how the Russos kind of gave people their moments, and they gave them longer than because should, but it kind of worked out for that film. In this one, look at the first Superman movie. Like Otis, all those characters are all kind of, from Otis, from Superman down to Otis, everybody had their moments. Superman's father, Lana's in there for like 2 seconds. She has, two scenes, and they're both killer. So it's like you just want to have a moment. You don't need to get in, prove that he's a great sort of reporter. Just have a moment. But they really took a lot of steam out of it. I think the Perry could have been good, but it was kind of I kept seeing the actor, not Perry, but and I definitely wanted to like this Lois, but she was, as Cal was saying, kind of separated from Superman and having this tension that didn't lead to chemistry. I won't say that they had no chemistry, but this tension that would take it away. And then the moments where you see her saving him, there's a ton of mortality moments in there. Those kind of work for me. Where like even though I don't want to be kicked around 3 million times on Krypton and then tossed in the water. But we had the moment of mortality, and she kind of helps him. Well, both of them help him because he flies back to her. Her husband flies back to her, and then and the kid points him out. Oh, he's there, and they fish him out, and then that sort of thing. So, um,
Wow. I mean, I thought we said you were, we were wrapping it up. I thought it was just a character.
we talked about some things, so I brought some things up. All right.
Okay, no problem. And so overall, what is your take? If you want, since you were pretty loquacious there.
You're asking for more.
I just want him to just tell me in a simple thing.
What do
It's
you want
a,
me to
it's
say?
a
Let me
B
say.
and
What do you want
A,
me to
and
answer?
you like it.
What do you want
What's
to
the
answer?
answer?
I
You got
said
to
I
talking now.
struggled
You're
with
like,
it.
give me a little more. Give me a little more.
I'm trying to say with the
struggled.
character
I
overall.
struggled with it. I struggled
What
with it.
about
I
Brandon
wanted to
Routh?
like it. I wanted to like them, but it seemed like they were trying to go for a retread. But the thing is
Okay.
that I told you the action moments. I picked the parts I liked. I did like the bullet scenes. I
I was
definitely
just trying to get
more
you to
so
say
the plane.
yay or nay with Brandon, but I guess not
I'm
then.
not going Brandon because I would wish a better story around his character. See what was going to happen. Maybe get to the next one, see what happens on there. We'll
I
see how
like,
it
I
plays
actually
out.
like Brandon Routh. I think he did a good job when he came back and he's like a fish out of water
I
kind
mean,
of.
you talking about what's the name? You talking about this movie or you
Superman
talking about
Returns.
Superman
Superman
Returns?
Returns.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, the problem was, like you said, he was playing a retread, and I think that kind of like hobbled him. That's my issue there. I think he could have done so much better, especially when we see what he did in Crisis in the Arrowverse. And he just seems so sincere, so Boy Scout. I've seen him in other roles, and he always comes across as the exact same way. And I'm
Mhm.
like, damn, this guy really is. And you know who put me onto this? Shockingly, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to only say it one time, and I'm going to take it away every other time. Cal, you know, I thought he really, to me, looks as though he could have been Superman if they would have,
Look
if
how
they
tall
stuck
he
with him,
is. Good lord.
you know. So, so that's why I say, the movie he came back, and when he came back, it was such a big deal. Everybody wanted to see a Superman film. I just felt that You know,
Those guys are so no. I was so annoyed when I saw the reaction he got when he came back to play Superman for Crisis on the CW because
Oh,
he had been
oh,
getting scat for years. His portrayal of
oh.
Superman. Okay, he was getting scat for years. Everybody was like, "Oh, it was a terrible movie. This, that, it was so bad. He didn't throw a punch. He came over there, did that. Oh, he should get his own series. Oh, it was good. Always loved Superman Returns. Always loved. So full of it. So full of it. At the end of the day, I mean, but again, that's what you got fandom. You know, you're only as good. You're only as good as their best memory of you. Not the and again, this is one of the reasons why I came out with with facts because initially this film was well received, and then it became, oh, this was such a terrible failure at the end of the day because it didn't get a sequel. Not based on the actual movie, but it didn't get a sequel. They took their shots here and there. Then you put the guy back in the suit. Okay, you put him back in the suit. He literally, has less camera time than he ever had in the other movie, and yet somehow, oh yeah, this is miraculously better. They were so full of it at the end of the day, and I was calling people out. I was like, all of you guys have nothing good to say about Superman Returns. Well, I didn't like Superman Returns, but I really liked him as right over. I'm like, oh, you're so full of it. Just nonsense at the end of the day.
Well, I would point out that when you bring that up, the thing is that's what I don't like when there's a thing in the Flintstones when was it Fred is hi-fi as he's a teen sensation, and Betty and Wilma decide they're going to destroy it. So it's like, how do we do it? That we tell teenagers that hi-fi is square, and it's not the rectangle like what's the name does Quentin Tarantino. But Quentin Tarantino, in referencing it, he does that a lot. He kind of throws a little landmine, like a psychological landmine somewhere. And then, like Kevin Smith said, hey, there's no punching in there. Let's go review this. We got Man of Steel. He's punching. We're going to review both of them. Look, he's punching in this. I don't know why people don't like it. There was no punching in another thing. And it's like that kind of just weeded into fandom. And they're like, yeah, I didn't like it because of the no punching. And they're like, did you see the plane scene? It's like,
But
Lord.
these are cats who are literally they're doing Animal Farm with all four legs good, two legs bad. They're not thinking.
Mhm.
It's just like, hey, what's the best clip? Like, yeah, he's right. He didn't throw a punch and without the connective tissue that there was no reason for him to do it. There was no reason for him to throw a punch. He was not fighting against Zod and company from the Phantom Zone. No.
Yeah.
but I mean, you're glad you brought that up. When you have someone like Zod, he fights somebody like that, and then you're following Luthor, who doesn't have a super suit. You don't believe Luthor here has the power or even the intellect, somewhat, to do some of the things that he's doing. I mean, that's if you really want to know, my main
I,
criticism was that had become president in the comic book. Luthor had
I,
evolved to a serious threat to Superman, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the power he was wielding, in terms of being the president, he used all his companies. He's a smart guy. And here's this guy. He takes over the country. He's running it, and I gotta say, probably was running it damn well too.
I,
Because we don't have a problem with him running the country in those
What
comics.
are you talking about?
I think
President Luthor.
you went off the rails going into all of the Luthor as president, but I
Yeah, I
think
have to look over that comic book because I have the
your
comic, and
point, your
I was
point
like,
of
oh,
Good.
your point
Good
of
grief.
Luthor not being that smart, that is golden. To say we don't even know if he's actually smart at all. Like,
yeah. There's no plans within plans to do things, and I'm like, this guy is like, come on, man. Real estate transaction again. It's like so. It's like
no, but the thing is, in the first one, that's the thing. It was cool that he was like,
yeah, the first one, yes.
he had a. It wasn't comic book because it was down to earth plan, but it was larger than life. His location was larger than life. The hard part is that Luthor had what a train set, and I was just like, oh, okay, all right, come on, you're going in reverse now. Like that the layer underground where his underlings didn't understand it. I'm just like, no, this is a villain hideout. Like as a kid, and then when you see the TV version, I can't remember whether I saw Superman on TV in the movie. I think I saw it in the movies first. But when you see him Superman breaking into the layer, and he got all these traps for Superman to break through, it's like, yeah, it's a definite layer. This
Yes, it
is a
is.
comic book layer, and it's like, oh, this guy who has to we try to show where he got the money from. It kind of felt like Superman 4 when they kind of It's like, hey, we need to get Superman hair. This one strand of Superman hair can hold up X, Y. Then he just comes with some clippers. Click. And it's like, no. What kind of
You know
clippers
what?
are those in Superman for?
In part, it's because I'm holding Gene Hackman. That first one was a surprise. It was definitely good. You believe Gene Hackman, yes, but then Kevin Spacey playing the same role again. It's like, why would Cal? Why didn't they do 3 and 4? Why did
I
they go
don't
back to
know, man.
two?
This is just nitpicking for me at this point. You didn't like it. You didn't like it. Let it go.
I'm
Let it
saying,
go with it.
but Cal, why didn't they put? Why did it? Why was it a retread of two? Why was it? Why was two a sequel to two as opposed to 3 and 4? Why not a sequel to four?
Because four was terrible.
Yeah, that
I
could
don't
be.
know. I'm asking you why.
Because four was terrible. It
Oh,
was Superman
that's
four
the answer. I thought
three.
you were
And three had
in
Richard
three.
Pryor in
Richard
it.
Pryor.
Richard
Huh?
Pryor. So even though no
All
one
right.
looks at it for the Lana stuff, they look at it and say Richard Pryor. The tobacco kryptonite. They're like it all falls apart in those. And of course the fake Brainiac. There's a lot of terrible stuff in it. Even though I did watch as a kid, I watched it a bunch of times and picked the
The
parts I
Falcons were
liked.
like the Falcons were like, and mind you, Superman three was profitable.
Yes.
That put the most money in the Salkins' pocket. It was that movie because they had already done everything. So they had all the green screen, the costume, they had all the tech that they needed, all the apparatus. So, everything was already built. So, and I mean, this is what Ilya Salkin goes on to say this. He was like, this is the film where we really started to make some money. So these guys didn't really care if Richard Pryor was in the film or not. They were like, hey, if this will help us make few extra bucks, put Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby in the film at the end of the day. We don't care. The whole idea was just like Richard Pryor was popular. Let's put him in a Superman film and maximize the money we can make on it. But you're not going to continue after that. We really don't care what happened to Gus Gorman. Superman 4, I mean, Christopher Reeve is gone on record to say the less said about Superman 4, the better. That movie I mean, good grief. If you want to talk about budget issues, that's your movie. They cut the budget. When you look at the special effects, you're like, this is bad. This is bad at the end of the day. So, I mean, it had a pretty good storyline, but just not a good film. And that was one of the reasons that after 86, because of Superman 4, that pretty much put the franchise to bed. The Salkins, to their credit, never stopped manipulating that character because they went straight to syndication with Superboy. And they wanted to do another film. They were trying to do Superman 5, but Warner Brothers wanted the rights back from the Salkins. They had already, when they sold it to the Salkins, they thought they were getting over because they never thought the Salkins could pull it off and actually make a Superman film. And then once they saw how much money the first one did, they were like, okay, let's renegotiate. But they really wanted those rights back. If they felt that they always sold them too cheap, they probably did. They never thought the film was going to. They didn't think the film could be executed. So once the rights time ran out, okay, everything went right back to Warner Brothers, and I mean, that was what 1992, and we still didn't see a film until 2006. You still had all of this development held, and the Salkins wanted to do something. They had tried to get a Superman 5 off the ground, but they weren't able to do it. So if you're going to pick up from that original film franchise, Superman 2, if you're going to inject yourself anywhere, Superman, it would either be between Superman 1 and 2 or directly following Superman 2. That's going to be your best bet.
It sounds confusing. I'm sorry. But I mean,
It's
it makes sense that that's the more popular one. I thought, it could have been. But again, Lex Luthor, they've done a great job with Lex Luthor in Justice League Unlimited. They've done a great job with Justice League.
let it go, man. It was the first film in a new franchise. Lex Luthor could have done a whole bunch of stuff later. They never got the opportunity. We
Okay.
get it. You don't like it. Okay.
No, I said Brandon Routh was good. It was a decent movie. Would I watch it? Yeah. I mean, look,
I'm
family
talking
members of
about
mine liked
Lex
the movie.
Luthor. He
Look,
wasn't
family
bad
members
enough
of
for you.
mine liked the
He
movie.
wasn't evil enough. He didn't come up with any machinations. He didn't run for president. Okay. You win. Please, let's just move on. Thank you.
Okay, so finally going on. So So I say the movie is watchable. I say it's a C. What do you say about the movie, Cal?
A minus.
A minus. Okay, so we've had a spectrum. You have Petey, who is off the reservation with, I can't believe he says it's that bad. Me, who's more middle of the road, with certain aspects, especially the Luther, but that's a whole nother issue. And Cal, who says, "Yo, this is it. This is the definite it." And I gotta say again, I will say, Cal put me on to Brandon Routh, and I gotta say,
No,
this guy
I
really,
am
really
not
should.
by any stretch of the I am not by any stretch of the imagination saying this is it. Okay,
No,
if I
I'm
was going
saying
to say this
Brandon
is
Routh.
it, I would say that about Superman the movie. But I am trying. I mean, I try to do this more with the films and the media that I have to take in now. What were they trying to execute? Did they achieve that? If they did, then I give them the credit that's due for it, whether I like it or not. So if the whole idea is that you want to tell a story in which the hero fights 100 ninja and successfully, successfully defeats them, and you execute that well, whether I like it or not, I'm like, look, you came and you executed what it was that you wanted to do. That's going to get you a decent score for me at the end of the day. Now, if you didn't execute, yeah, terrible. What am I going to do? Give you an A because I like the soundtrack? So that's where I was coming in. I mean, I understood everything else, that this was supposed to be the start. This was supposed to be the start of future films. Didn't happen, so on and so forth. But I'm just taking it as what was given.
I got it. I got it.
So
So here's the
the
question.
hard part, I'll say the hard part is saying, when I went to the theater and the scenes that you see when you see this in the movie, the plane, the bullets, the what's the name, those things, I say I was happy to be in the theater to watch. Watching it at home, you're not enthralled by everything that's in there. So there's some things that you can go see and say, like, in comparison, say, like, I said I didn't want to see A Quiet Place, right? Because it was going to be just kind of your noise, kind of a horror thing. And then when I watched it at home, I was like, oh man, I should have saw this in the theater. And then I watched two, and I was like, wow, yeah, they pulled it off. They really killed it. I should have seen this in the movie. So there's so many bits that work, especially when you're in the movie and there's the sound is quiet in the theater. So you have a theater experience. So when you see the plane happen, you got the shuttle,
Yeah.
Superman's get the shuttle off, he's getting the shuttle off, and you're like, oh my God, this other thing is happening. He's playing off of the Superman one of two things at once, right?
You
So
saw it in you saw regular. Did you see
not an
regular
IMAX.
theater or I'm?
This is regular
You saw it in
theater.
IMAX?
No, I just saw it
Right.
in theater, regular theater.
Yeah, I saw it in
It was,
IMAX. I saw it in IMAX twice. It made a really big because it was made
yeah,
for IMAX too. Made a really big difference. And in the theater, it's just a really good sequence.
yeah.
It is still hands down like the best action sequence in a Superman movie, which is probably going to be surpassed by Superman 2025. But it's held the record for a pretty long time.
So that's the thing of the recommendation of saying, going to see this. If you could go back, the whatever vision that Brian Singer had when he pulling off those scenes of us knowing what kryptonite does to him. There is some, obviously it's a movie, it has to happen, but it kind of feels, it feels like it's going against what's in your head, saying this is not going to work. Like this, he could. Are the movies going to put it to it not working? And it's like, oh man, he's got to hit the floor. And it played to some things that I would think about when I was thinking about Superman. I think it gets after the movie of saying, if would Superman still have some ability post kryptonite, like when he hits the ground, he has some invulnerability for him to fly all the way down, even though he's been, had this kryptonite in the before. I think he's called it, the K poison and that sort of thing. Would he still have some ability that would keep him alive? So it's like that was interesting to see. But all that's the movie theater effect, right? That sort of thing that I like. The stuff that I can look at as far as storytelling in Superman 3, where I can say, oh, look at Lana and Superman stuff, those things. And then as a kid, it's like, oh, the video game stuff, that was crazy in Superman 3. Why wasn't the video game for Atari for Superman like that one in the movie? That sort of thing. But for a movie,
Yeah, that video game was really frustrating. I'm still looking at because we have the opening trailer for the new Superman movie, and it opens with them all busted up. And here, Superman Returns, he fell, he fell to Earth, and there was not a mark on him. So you can
Yeah.
see how much times have changed. This
Yeah.
is definitely this isn't your father's Superman. This guy can get effed up.
So yes, well that's the thing. I would, definitely if you could see it in the theater, I would say, it's something to see. It's definitely something to see. I said the same, when I was iffy on the first X-Men movie and I saw the trailer and I was like, the trailer looks good. Let me go see this, and it paid off. I was like, wow, this is fun. There's stuff that I'm iffy on, but as far as the movie going, it's the same isn't for issues I said about it, but movie going thing. If you could see it in the theater, dude, that's definitely worth watching. So that'll be my recommend for it. I iffy on the story, but some of the visuals are very cool.
So again, I'm going to ask Brandon Routh as Superman. How would you rate him compared to the others? Cal, the ball's in your court.
What, scale of 1 to 10?
Scale of 1 to 3 or 5.
It's 1 to 3. How can you have a
One to
scale of one to
five.
three?
In the modern Superman, how does he rate to you?
I'm gonna do scale of 1 to 10. With Christopher Reeve being a 10, Brandon Routh 8.
What was he?
Gave him an 8.
8. Okay, cool.
So who was 9? The guy from Smallville?
No, he never played Superman.
And Henry Cavill's number 8. It's usually the scale is 1 to 5. You have the top one, then you go 3,
How?
this person, 2, this person, 1 person. That's how it goes.
No, no,
you got the
you're
gold, the
ranking.
bronze.
No, because you want to rank them in like some sort of order, and I'm not doing that. I'm saying this guy played this role out of 1 to 10. How good did he play it? 8 out of 10. That's how I'm going.
Okay. Well, all right, everybody, you've heard it all. We've done a pretty good
Okay.
balanced review of the whole shebang.
Tom Welling
Superman
never played
Returns.
Superman.
Was
Sorry.
that?
Tom Welling never played Superman. You can do
Okay.
when you want to do like a scale of Clark Kent's, then yeah, you can do that. He'd probably be 10 out of 10 for that one, but he never played Superman.
Isn't he more the? I don't
Probably
know.
Superboy. I don't know if it's Clark Kent then. I think probably more Superboy. All right. So hey, anything else, gents, before we wrap this up?
I guess that's it. We've gone on for a very long time, a very
Yes,
long
we have.
time,
Yes, we have.
and that's all Mars's fault.
I think when you go over the minutes, you'll clearly see who's done most of the.
I'm gonna say
Yes.
who.
Yeah. Please have
Yeah,
the
it was you.
transcript on this. All right, Spinnerack. If you like what you heard, give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Spinnerack
We are
Out.
out.
and Ian, thank you.